Welcome to Volunteer Leaders in Action. I'm Anna Guest, founder of Rising Tide Volunteer Solutions, and I can't wait to dig into this conversation today with Julie Ugoretz. Julie is a social worker living in Brooklyn and working in New York City with SAGE, where they manage a friendly visitor program for LGBTQ plus elders. I heard Julie speak at a webinar recently, and I immediately knew that I wanted to have a conversation about how they approach support and supervision with volunteers. So welcome, Julie. I'm really excited that you're here today.
Yes, thank you, Anna. I'm really excited to be here and share about our program with you.
Excellent. So I'd love to start just with some background about the work that you do and how volunteers are part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you mentioned, I am a social worker and the program manager of Friendly Visiting at SAGE. SAGE is an agency that serves LGBTQ older people through direct service and also some advocacy work. SAGE was founded in 1978, as was the Friendly Visitor Program. The story goes that they actually founded SAGE because they needed an agency to house the program rather than the other way around. That's how one founder describes it. I don't know if it's actually true, as stories go. Yeah, so the Friendly Visitor Program is really embedded within SAGE's work and also within the LGBTQ community here in New York City. And the basic structure of the program is that we send volunteers into the homes of LGBTQ plus older people for weekly social visits.
Awesome. And so volunteers are doing that work. They're the ones out there actually in the community.
Exactly. Yep, our program is me, some interns, and really mostly our volunteers who make it run.
Excellent. I love that so much because it's one of the great examples of how much is possible that wouldn't otherwise be if volunteers weren't involved. And I'm guessing also that it's like people from the LGBTQ plus community volunteering for other people from that community, and so that is very just makes a huge difference in how we serve people.
Yeah, I feel like that adds another layer of connection and meaning to the program that people are sharing that kind of identity generally. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So, I'd be curious to hear how you sort of found your way to working with volunteers and if you feel like you have a superpower as a volunteer leader.
Um, how did I find my way to working with volunteers? I started at Sage in my second year of social work school as an intern doing case management. I graduated in 2020, really scary time to be a new social worker in the world. And I got offered this job as the program manager and took it. And it's been really exciting. It's not exactly where I pictured myself, but I found working with volunteers to be just so meaningful in ways that I really didn't expect. And it's exciting to be able to think about the program from the lens of supporting volunteers.
Awesome. Yeah, that really resonates with my own experience too. I have my degree in occupational therapy and wasn't sure where I would end up, but and did not expect to be working with volunteers either. But I think, like you, found a lot of those the skills and background that I learned in school like really helpful for leadership and engaging with people and yeah, excellent. So, are there a couple of things from your social work background that you find yourself using a lot when you're working with volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say definitely the kind of ability to make referrals and to think kind of systematically about what a person might need and kind of thinking about that holistically as well, kind of having a familiarity with aging in New York City, kind of what the landscape of resources is, I think comes from kind of my social work background. And then also that spirit of like, I might not be able to answer every volunteer question, but I can definitely find someone who can.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So thinking about your volunteers and how you set them up for success, how do you approach that? Especially doing the work that they do where they're, they're working closely with other people in their homes, maybe seeing difficult um, situations and navigating alongside a client difficult situations. How do you support them in that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is such an intimate kind of work that they're doing. They're in a person's home, one on one. They can often be sort of the only person not in uniform who that person gets to see, the only like true social contact. So it can be really rewarding, but also really intense. And I think that we try to prepare our volunteers for that and want them to feel like they're not alone in this work, even though they may be doing it alone for the most kind of hours that they're serving. We have a really robust training before matching. It's a full day. And the training touches on what services SAGE offers, the history of this population, kind of what makes this population, what makes LGBTQ elders different from their straight peers. And then our kind of second half of the day is a lot about empathy, listening skills, and kind of building that even if it's skills that the volunteers possess, kind of giving them names so they feel like they have a toolbox going into the work that they're doing. And then lots of role plays also, so they kind of have a sense of what this actually looks like. They also get to hear from a current volunteer at the training, which I think helps a lot. And then I would also say we support a lot of our volunteers early on in their matches. And I think that really enables a lot of them to succeed. Kind of, we do a phone call with the client and the volunteer after their first visit. So, really making sure things get off on a clear, right, connected start. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I want to just ask a couple follow-up questions. Um, and I guess one of them I hadn't really thought about till you've just been talking is like, how do you match people? Like, I'm guessing there's quite a lot of thought that goes into making sure that you're right, matching the right volunteer with the right client. So that's one thing I wanted to ask about. And then I love that follow-up phone call with each. And I'm guessing that's like a separate call. You check in with each.
Yeah. Give each their space to say what's really going on. Yeah, I matching is one of my favorite parts of the job, and I have learned a lot of it from the person who supervises me now, who used to run the program. A lot of it is based on location. New York is a big city, and it doesn't work for people to be traveling an hour and a half to the person they're visiting on the subway. So making sure the match is accessible for them, either from home or work. We look at common interests, of course, theater, music, kind of things like that that people might share, maybe a retired architect and a current architect, kind of matches like that. And I think part of it is honestly just, could we see these two people sitting down and enjoying talking to each other? Like, do we have a gut feeling that these people would get along? Yeah, yeah, it's an exciting process. I really love it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I love, like, this is putting on a little bit of the hat that I do in my other work, but like I love thinking about probably intergenerational connections as well, and like how much value there is in those things.
Yes, totally. We ask our clients who they are looking to be matched with, and it's interesting. Some say, I really want someone close to me in age. Some say, I really want someone younger. It kind of just depends on what they happen to be looking for. Yeah.
That's great. So one of the things that I heard you speak about was, offering like group meetings where a bunch of volunteers come together and have some support in that way. So I'd be really curious to hear what that looks like, and how you structure it. and what people seem to get out of it, how it supports them in their role.
Yeah, those peer volunteer supervision meetings are really like a core of the program, I would say. We do them probably every 6-ish weeks. Now they're over Zoom. We've done a couple in person, and I'm sure people listening to this will relate that it's a little tougher to get people to show up in person than it was maybe before COVID times. So Zoom, it makes it accessible to folks. Yeah, and some of the meetings are really about peer supervision. We say, what's going on in your match? Is there anything that's going well? Is there anything that concerns you? Let's talk about it. And then volunteers get to kind of source information from each other, which is really wonderful. Because we have some volunteers who have been with the program for 5, 6, 7 years, and they have just such a wealth of information. And I think it speaks a lot to the kind of energy of the program that people come back to supervision meetings even after they're out of the first year of their match, which is kind of when supervision meetings are required for volunteers. So those are the peer supervision. And then we also do kind of skills building meetings. We tend to alternate between. So last month, for example, we had a meeting about hearing impairment and kind of ways to deal with working with someone who has hearing loss. And that was really interesting. We've had falls prevention, working with people with dementia, kind of little like extra skills, kind of boosts that people can kind of pick up and that we think volunteers will find useful. And then we also often make time at the volunteer meetings if a volunteer chooses for them to share about a participant who's passed away. And I think that can be a really important part of helping them to mourn the relationship. It's such a special relationship. Kind of only other friendly visitors can really understand it with each other. And also to help friendly visitors who are with someone who's still living to kind of think about what that experience might be like. You know, it's not guaranteed to happen in every match, of course, but giving space for that experience of loss also is part of our meetings.
Yeah. Oh, they sound amazing. I
Yeah.
would love to be
I
part of
love them.
it. And I'm curious, it sounds like there's a lot of camaraderie built into the way that your program works around bringing volunteers together. And I'm kind of curious, like, how much do you feel like they're looking to you for support, and how much do they kind of also reach out to each other in a
Yeah.
community way?
Yeah, I definitely encourage them to use each other as resources because they have really gone through it in a way that I haven't as the person kind of, supervising the program. Yeah, we also do kind of fun volunteer events. We have a holiday party, a pride party. We've done a couple like participant and volunteer together, like drag bingo, things like that, that are really fun. And that's kind of another place where like they might, exchange numbers, exchange emails, and kind of connect in a way that's a little more informal and friendly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that when you see community growing up around volunteer engagement. That's like one of the best parts. And I know that for a lot of volunteers, that's part of why they get involved, because
Totally.
they want that social piece.
Yeah.
Um, I'd also just like to ask you about like, how do you structure any individual support that you might offer to volunteers? And what do you tell them about your availability? Do you have any boundaries you also put up that support you in your role? So just would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, definitely. Volunteers are required to submit a report every month. It's just kind of a short form that says the hours that they volunteered for, which is for our own documentation, and then a couple of questions. Do you find the situation your client is dealing with stressful? Do you feel angry? Do you feel like you might not be able to visit for longer? So we read through all of those every month, and we do respond to them via email every month. So at least every volunteer is getting kind of one personal contact with one of us, either myself or one of our really great program interns. Yeah, so that's kind of the individual supervision. And then I'm always happy to jump on a call, and I hope volunteers know that. But also setting the boundary of I'm not available to jump on a call after hours. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. And so I'm just gonna ask this follow-up question because I know a lot of organizations struggle with how to manage reporting of volunteer hours. So when you are sending, like, is that an email that goes out directly every month with, here's a link or here's this form? Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I won't say it's my least favorite part of my job to harangue the volunteers into submitting their reports, but it's definitely not my favorite. Yeah, we send out an email with a link every month. Usually it's timed with the end of the month, so they have kind of 3 days to submit. To be honest, we usually do one group email, a group reminder, another group reminder, and then individual email reminders. So we push them, and I still am missing, 4 or 5 volunteer reports every month. It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely not that's not why they volunteer.
Oh no. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I love the structure that you have though. I think that's really great. And do you use like a volunteer management system or is it more informal?
Don't actually. Yeah. Mostly kind of based in Excel spreadsheets. Yeah.
Great. So any sort of lessons you've learned along the way when it comes to support and supervision and any of that?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's often said, but we probably can't say it enough, but just taking care of yourself as a program manager or volunteer leader is so important. Just you can't pour from an empty cup. I really value my own supervision and I have group supervision, individual supervision, and that really allows me to get the support I need, also professional development, those sorts of things, kind of keeping myself feeling like whole and qualified is really important.
Yeah, I that's coming up a lot lately. It was our topic in a whole topic in the last interview we did. And yeah, it just feels like particularly feels like a heavy world out there sometimes. And so prioritizing that time to take care of yourself it's critical.
Yeah,
You brought
yeah,
also.
yes.
Um, what advice might you have for other volunteer leaders?
Yeah, I thought about this question. It's interesting. I would say um we live in a world, especially with nonprofits, where a lot of the focus can be on numbers. How many matches are you producing? How many hours of volunteer service are you, able to show? And I would just say my advice is that like every volunteer interaction is special and meaningful, and kind of as much as possible, I hope folks cannot get swept away in the numbers. Like I often think we have about probably between 70 and 80 active matches in the program right now, and each of those are 2 people who are visiting each other every week, and like how significant is every single one of those relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like one of the ways that we can really make the most and the best of our volunteer programs and the volunteers who so generously give their time is to just keep the focus um, on how much that like what they do matters. And so that's really well said. And the stories too that like might not be
Totally.
a number, but those stories that come out of um, the work that they're doing and the relationships that they're building uh, speak so loudly about
So
the
special. Yeah.
yeah. So, what brings you joy or makes you feel grateful to work with volunteers?
Yeah, this was another question that I loved in thinking about. Definitely watching connections grow. I feel like I have like a little kind of peephole into all of these different relationships, and whether it's people who just share like a love of Broadway and are able to connect about that, watching old Broadway performances on YouTube, or if it's people who are more active, maybe they're kind of like taking advantage of New York City museums and things like that. Just watching each of those connections is really, really special. And then I would say also there's a deep commitment to this work for me as a queer person, serving queer elders, working with queer volunteers mostly. Um, it feels like we're all participating kind of in a legacy of care and supporting each other when this kind of larger systems might not be supporting us. And it moves me to feel connected to the friendly visitors who are doing basically the same work in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And here we are in 2023 still visiting people in their homes. It's such a simple and such a meaningful kind of work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels like there's so much to be done and so many ways that we can continue to improve that. I um, also would identify with this community, and so I was in a webinar, not a webinar, it was a training this morning where we were sharing stories of um, older adults or ways that people are sort of breaking our expectations or assumptions or stereotypes about what it means to get older, and people who are aging sort of alone, in the sense that they don't have children or they don't have family close by, and that really resonated with me, and so I love these programs that support people in their authenticity and connection and really having strong community and social ties around them. So that was a total tangent.
No,
But
I love it. I was gonna say, the this type of model fits so well with this community because so often home is one of the few places that they have really been able to be out and authentically themselves. Maybe they weren't out at work, they're not out with their doctors, things like that. So to have a volunteer in the home connecting in this really personal, intimate space is, yeah, not sarcastically, it makes me like a little misty-eyed every time I think about it. It's really special.
it's really special. Oh, so Julie, this is sort of the end of the questions
Great.
that I had prepared. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say thank you so much for being open to talking with me. I love sharing about this program. Folks can obviously check out Sage's website if they're curious, interested in learning more, or if they know someone who might benefit from the program. We have programs here in New York City as well as in South Florida available to folks. Yeah, and I'm always happy to chat LGBT aging, volunteers, all of that. Happy to connect.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience today. And we'll be sharing your contact information and some other resources with this recording. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.